So last time we were dealing with equations that looked like equations. They were literal equations, but they still had numbers in them. So they were a little bit more comfortable usually for kids to work with. Today we're working with equations that don't really have numbers in them at all. They have more than 2 letters in them. So they are formulas most of the time. This first one that we're doing is actually still a literal equation. Technically here, if we had ax minus by equals c, you could make a case that there's only 2 variables here. But since these are all letters, we don't really understand what this formula here is, we're going to ignore that. We're going to treat them all like variables. When solving an equation for any variable, just follow the usual properties of equality that we've been using. Don't let the fact that you have all these variables confuse you. Solve ax minus by equals c for x. So first thing I got to do is find x in my formula that I'm looking at, or my literal equation. Here it is right here. So that means I got to get that thing by itself somehow. So what do I need to do first? Yep. I got this ax term right here. I'm going to get that ax term by itself, which means I got to get rid of this negative by sitting here. In order to get rid of negative by, I'm going to add by to both sides. X minus by equals c. So what am I left with once I add by to both sides? Ax equals, yeah, I can't add those two things together. C and by are totally different. I can't put them together. So I just write c plus by. And my goal is solve for x. Can I do that now? Divide by a. So I'll divide by a here, and I'll divide everything by a over there. What am I left with on the left? Just x. Equals, on the right, c plus by divided by a. Is there anything left to do? Nope. No reducing, no rearranging, no substituting. That's it. So that's my answer. And we can do the same for any of those letters in that literal equation that we're looking at. All right, go ahead and try the second one. The equation here is this guy. Negative t equals r plus px, and we want to solve that one for x. Go ahead. It's important when you do these to recognize what operation is going on, okay? If you have multiplication going on, you undo that using division. If you have addition going on, you undo that using subtraction. If you're trying to move a term and it's negative, you're going to add to both sides. And that all just comes with experience. So keep practicing, and this will start to become like breathing to you. It's going to be natural and easy. Negative t equals r plus px. We want to solve for x. What's the first thing we need to do? We want to get the x term by itself. That's this guy right here. So we have a positive r sitting here, so I'm going to undo that thing by subtracting r from both sides. R minus r is 0. It's gone. That's the whole point. Over here, we have a negative r minus t, or a negative t minus r. Doesn't matter what order you write it in. I'm going to go ahead and write it in what I think is probably alphabetical order, so I think I'll put the r first. So I have negative r minus t. I don't know why I wanted to do that, but I did. Equals px. Yep. This is p times x. So we need to undo that by dividing by p to both sides. So on the right, I'm left with x, which is my goal, so that's good, equals the negative r minus t, all divided by p on the left. Is this an acceptable answer? Yeah. Do I need to have the x over here? Equals, x equals, that stuff? Can I? Yes, but I don't have to. That's a perfectly acceptable answer right there. So you're done. All right, I've been saying the word formula. Here's a bunch of formulas that you've probably worked with at some point in your math careers as students, okay? The perimeter of a rectangle, perimeter means what? Not area, distance around. It's the distance around. So like if you walked around the school, that would be the perimeter of the school, okay? The perimeter of a rectangle is P equals 2L plus 2W. Why 2? Because there's 2 lengths and 2 widths in a rectangle, right? That's why it winds up being 2L and 2W. So they're telling you what these letters mean off to the side here. The circumference of a circle, what does the circumference mean? Not area. It's distance around. Yeah. Circumference is a special perimeter. It's the perimeter of a circle. It has its own name. It's circumference. C equals 2 pi r. That symbol right there is pi. We've all seen that one before, right? Pi day is our favorite day of the year in math class for sure. And what does r stand for? Radius. What does capital C stand for? Circumference. So all of these letters have meaning. Area of a rectangle. Now we are talking about area. Okay? A equals what? Length times width. There's another way you could say that, base times height, or base times width. I've heard all kinds of different ways to say it. But the idea is you multiply the two sides together. Area of a triangle. A equals 1/2 what? Base times height. Good. Area of a circle. A equals what? Pi times the radius squared. So if you had a radius of 3, the area would be 9 times pi. Distance traveled. This one is a big one. You use that a lot in science classes. Probably Mr. Bowe's class, you use that a lot. D equals RT. We use this one a lot, and we can solve for any one of these variables. So if you want to know how fast you were going, that would be your rate. You could solve for R. If you want to know how long it took, you could solve for T. So you actually have 3 equations sitting right here from just this one equation. Temperature. What is this C? Celsius, and F is Fahrenheit. So if you want to impress your family someday, and you see when you drive down the road and you see somebody's temperature saying it's 21 degrees Celsius out, if you had this formula memorized and had it solved for F in your head, you can convert that Celsius to Fahrenheit. And you can be like, oh, well, it's this much Fahrenheit out instead of 21 degrees Celsius, because nobody knows what that means, right? Okay, what I want you to do is pick any one of these formulas right here. If you don't feel very confident, pick one that looks maybe easy. If you feel pretty confident, maybe you want to try one that's a little bit harder, and solve for a different variable. Okay? So right now, like the C is solved, this is solved for C. In this formula, you would want to solve for F. Or in this one, you'd want to solve for one of these other variables right here. All right? Pick one of these formulas and solve for a different variable of your choice. It's up to you. Go ahead. What is the radius of a circle with a circumference of 64 feet? Use 3.14 for pi and round to the nearest tenth. So all of those directions right there we're going to have to follow, but we want the radius of a circle with a circumference. So circle and circumference, tell me what formula I need to use. What formula do I need? I'm dealing with a circle and circumference. That won't be area. C equals 2 pi r. Okay? You need to spot the key words in there, and as soon as you see the word circle and circumference, that tells you need C equals 2 pi r. Okay, now what letter are we looking for here? We're looking for r. It says, what is the radius? So wouldn't it be nice if we had that formula solved for r? Yeah? So that's what we're going to do. How can I solve this for r? Divide by the 2 pi. And now I have r equals C over 2 pi. So r is what I'm looking for. Did they give me C? Yeah. Did they give me what to use for pi? Yeah. So I'm ready to go. I can substitute that stuff in. I'll just put an equal sign this way. C is what? 64. divided by 2 times pi, which is 3.14 they said to use. So now we're going to type into our calculators 64 divided by, and make sure that you're dividing by 2 times 3.14, okay? So on my calculator, I'm on a graph that I had for calculus going on. I want 64, and I want to divide by 2 times 3.14. So I can use parentheses and go 2 times 3.14. Close my parentheses and hit enter. And then notice that the calculator shows me what it thinks I meant. Is this what I meant? Yeah. This is what I had written here. So this is what I meant. I get 10.1911. So I'll write that down. Equals 10.1911. But the directions say to do what? Round to the nearest tenth. We found R, but it says round to the nearest tenth. So I'm going to keep that digit, but I'm going to look at this digit to figure out if I round or not. Do I round? Yes, I do, because that digit is bigger than 5. So this becomes 10.2, and we need to include units here. Feet. So 10.2 feet is the radius of that circle. Okay? Let me show you one more way that you can do that multiplication and division. You can set up your fraction. So that's by going Control, and then the fraction button is right there. So Control, the division key, gives me that fraction template. And then up top, I can type in the 64, press down to get to the denominator, and then I can type the 2 times 3.14. A lot of people like doing it that way because that way it just sets up the problem for you. And notice that I have exactly the same thing top and bottom for the first one and the second one. So when I press enter, I get the exact same answer. All right, what is the height of a triangle with an area of 24 inches squared and a base of 8 inches? What are the key words in this problem that are going to lead me to the correct formula? Triangle, first of all, and area. So what formula do I need? The area of a triangle, which is what? A equals 1/2 times base times height. Okay? Now what did they give me? They told me the area and they told me the base, and what am I looking for? H, the height. What is the height? So what should I do with my area formula here? I don't want to substitute yet. Solve for H. Okay? I want to solve for H here because this one is a little bit different than what we've seen before. What do I do with this 1/2 out front? It's 1/2 times though. I could divide by 1/2 or I could multiply by 2. That's what I want to do. Multiply by 2, multiply by 2. So now on the left, what do I have? 2a equals BH. Because the 1/2 times 2 becomes 2 over 2, which reduces down to 1. So we're just left with 1 BH, or just BH. We're almost there. Now what? Divide. We want H by itself. We don't have it yet, so we're going to divide by B. Divide by B. So now we get 2a over b equals H. So now that formula is solved for H. I can plug any area and base I want in, and that will give me the height of that triangle. The area that they gave me was what? So I'm going to write 2 times 24 divided by 8. I might be able to do that in my head. I can go 2 times 24 first and then divide by 8. Or I can go 2/8 reduces down to 1/4 and then 24 over 4. Or I could go 24 divided by 8 first and then multiply by 2. No matter what route I go, what do I get? 6 what? 6 inches, this is a height, so it's just inches. Okay? We will get into what we call a unit dimensional analysis. But this is an area, inches squared, divided by a length, inches. Inches squared divided by inches is just inches. 6 inches is the answer for the height. This beautiful picture right here shows a gigantic monarch butterfly. You guys ever seen a monarch butterfly before? Yeah? It is huge. They're large butterflies. But they do migrate every year. Where I'm from, that region, we have a lot of monarch butterflies. And then they migrate, and you can actually watch them migrate. In fact, recently on the news, there was a news station in this region right here that had on their radar, like their weather radar, showed a gigantic cloud of like precipitation or something, what the radar thought was precipitation. But there were no clouds in the sky. It was actually a massive wad of monarch butterflies flying overhead. So, pretty interesting. Anyway, these guys are the only butterfly that actually migrate. They do fly down south to like around Mexico in that area. The distance that a particular group of monarch butterflies travels is shown. So this particular group of monarch butterflies started around here and flew to about here, and how far did they have to fly? 1,700 miles. It shows right there, 1,700 miles. Okay? Then it tells me it takes a typical butterfly about 120 days to travel one way. So they're spending like a third of their life flying to somewhere else. It's kind of a bummer, but that's what they do. What is the average rate at which a butterfly travels in miles per day round to the nearest mile per day? Rate. What letter probably would be represented by rate? R. What letter probably would be represented by 120 days? T. What letter probably would be represented by 1,700 miles? D. What formula are we talking about here? D equals RT. Okay, which letter are we looking for? It says what? The average rate. So we are looking for R. Don't we have D? Don't we have T? Yeah. So we're going to solve this formula for R and then substitute our numbers in. So how do I do that? Divide both sides by T, and I get R equals D over T. So, what is D? That's the distance they travel, and the distance they travel is right here, 1,700 miles divided by 120 days. And notice I'm including the units on that because I want you guys to see the units. So R winds up being equal to, what's 1,700 divided by 120? I don't know. 1,700 divided by 120. But 85 over some other number, it doesn't make any sense to me. So I'm going to press Control-Enter to give me the decimal approximation. 14.1667 is what it shows me. So 14.1667 miles per day. Yeah, it does say round to the nearest mile per day. So that means I'm not going to keep these decimal places at all. The nearest mile per day is 14. R equals 14 miles per day. That little butterfly flies 14 miles a day. A little butterfly. How would you like to walk 14 miles a day? Yeah, now that's a butterfly moving 14 miles a day. It's pretty cool. Nature's an interesting thing, especially when you start looking at the math behind nature. Pacific gray whales also migrate. They migrate from Alaska to the waters around Baja California and also around Mexico, and then they go back. The whales travel the distance of about 5,000 miles each way at an average rate of 91 miles per day. How'd you like to walk 91 miles per day? Better yet, how'd you like to swim 91 miles per day? Yeah, not even Olympians can do that. How many days does it take the whales to migrate one way? So what formula do we need to use here? Again, D equals RT. And what letter are we looking for? It says about how many what? Days. And days is time. Days is an amount of time. D is distance, okay? So what letter are we solving for? T. So to do that, I need to divide both sides by R. So now I have T equals D over R. Can't we just?
Why don't you like that? I don't get it.
Because anytime somebody says, can't we just, it's usually a shortcut that has no mathematical backing. Or that it has mathematical backing, but you don't understand the mathematical backing. And I want you to understand the math behind it. So don't say, can't we just. Do I know what D is? It's 5,000, yeah. The whale's going to travel 5,000 miles one way. So that's going to be 5,000 miles divided by R, which is the rate, which is 91 miles per day. That's a rate. So 91 miles per day. So what is 5,000 divided by 91?
54.9.
Okay. 54.9. We're looking for time, so the units here would be days. It didn't say to round, so we're just going to let it be. 54.9 days. Almost 55 days. That whale goes 5,000 miles from freezing waters in Alaska to wonderful warm waters in Mexico.